Hey, everyone, it's Ian King. Let's talk about injury rehabilitation. In the 1980s, the dominant focus was on strength training. But during that decade, I identified one of the keys to success in sport, keeping an athlete injury free. It was that decade that formed my belief and my approach towards injury prevention and a zero tolerance attitude towards injuries. Now, if an injury did occur, obviously I had to learn how to deal with it. And that took a little bit longer. In the 1990s, strength training became the dominant focus from what I could see. And I believe that led to even more injuries than the previous decade. So by the 2000s, the focus had shifted to, say, everyone wanted to be a fat loss expert. But by the 2010s, it was definitely a shift towards everyone wanted to be a injury rehabilitation expert. Now, I've got a number of concerns around about that, and I'll come back to that. But first of all, let's look at how I handle the question of physical preparation coaches becoming injury rehabilitation experts in this short clip from a live event.
So I've talked about it a little bit. I just want to touch upon it here because it's pertinent to our earlier discussion, how probably one of the greatest trends I'm seeing in the industry at the moment is everyone wants to be a rehabilitation expert. Everyone wants to know how to identify and fix muscle imbalances. And I kind of get it because there's incredible demand for it. The training methods that have been popularized over the last 20 years have created more muscle imbalances than the entire world created for for 5 centuries before that. But what I don't get is the same people who created the problem think they're going to fix it. And I'm not saying they're the thought leaders that brought this shit to the world, but they've been drinking the Kool-Aid, and I think with that same mindset, they're going to become rehabilitation specialists all of a sudden. So in that earlier conversation, one of my coaches made reference to that, and we have a very clear attitude. You've got to be a pretty high level competency to understand the body enough to accurately interpret it. Because if you apply mainstream standards and think, well, I can go to a weekend course and I can assess the body's imbalances, then you're going to really mess up a lot of people. And I'm not saying that out of a fear campaign. I'm just saying, for me, it's a reality. The body's too complex for a relatively incompetent coach to think they're going to solve the problems that they created in the first place. And one of the greatest examples that is, and because I've been around the block a few times, I remember when the broomstick turned up, and I'm not talking about the broomstick used by bodybuilders to do twists. I'm not talking about the broomstick used by Olympic lifters to warm their shoulders up. I'm talking about the day round about 2000 or late 90s where this coach said to me, and look, if I put the broomstick above my head and squat down, I can tell so much about the human body. Holy shit. Anyway, I thought it couldn't go anywhere because it was such bullshit. But it turned into an industry icon, really, and a business model. Solution in a box, buy the broomstick, buy the other few other tools, get the learner manual, and all of a sudden you can interpret the human body. And we've got people with weekend courses telling people, because this happened, that must be so. And so I don't know, Robert, does that make sense to you what I'm saying? I gave you a pretty hard time before saying that, we don't teach people about how to fix problems until they learn how to stop making them, because it's far easier to write a balanced program to avoid an injury than it is to fix the injury, because by the time the injury is there, it's a bigger hole you've got to dig someone out of, and it's a more complex human problem than even just the physiology of it. So that's why I'm a little bit harsh around that subject. At level 0 coaches in our coaching program would love to become, Ian, please tell me the secret sauce. Well, no, it's not going to happen because you haven't paid your dues on competency yet. The scary thing for me is when people see me do something half of, that's how you do it. And that's how you interpret it. And that's how you get the results. It doesn't work like that. And then in addition to that, then people come ambulance chases. They go looking for broken people so they can be a hero. For me, and I don't want to be critical about our professional colleagues unnecessarily, but there's a lot of professions, a lot of individuals in the profession of healing that are meeting their needs more than the client's needs, especially around the concept of dependency. You have to come and see me 3 times a week for the next 10 years, otherwise you won't get better. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm very reluctant to reinforce the things that we actually end up teaching high-level coaches. Anyone comment or question on what I've just said? It's a bit of a soapbox on that one.
Coming from a high level, because I've learned assessing and stuff, and I even come to this camp, I kind of want to go over some things to get better at learning how to interpret it, individualize it.
Yeah.
I've been in the program for a few years, so it's not an overnight thing. And
And you saw me even yesterday, and I said, okay, I think I know what's going on here, and I turned around, no, I was wrong. You know, I'm real happy to grab a hypothesis, but I'm also very happy to rule it out and change my thinking based on what I see. But, you know, like, you got to be pretty experienced to see the things.
Yeah, sometimes you need to like a scan.
Absolutely. You know, we don't play God. Absolutely. And you also see times we say, we should stop. Don't talk to me until we get the scan done. That's one medical intervention that I'm a big fan of.
I wish that I know for a fact, had I spent the same amount of time in the early part of my career genuinely understanding, analyzing, and getting more competent at writing programs,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been miles ahead of where I thought I needed to be from assessing someone. That it was literally pushing the cart uphill without a horse, and it was so backward for me personally that what seems hard is actually relatively simple, and what seems simple is actually really complex and really hard. And I spent years just trying to be, well, an ambulance chaser, getting better at telling people what's wrong and sounding smart and charging more money for it, instead of taking responsibility for, I might have done that.
You might have created the problem. Absolutely.
I might have created that problem.
Yeah.
And now,
just because someone's added a twist to the lunge, it's still a quad dominant exercise. I'm not saying it's a bad exercise, but you know, people just get so blurred. You know, the fact that feet are on the ground doesn't make it a better exercise than an open chain exercise. Like, you know, there's a lot of blurring. You know, like a crawling push-up is still a push-up. So if you look at these functional training circuits that people do, because it's cheap to do a circuit with no equipment, you know, there's some challenges going on there.
well, I was just gonna say, and being capable of applying the numbers to what swinging a kettlebell actually does to the human body, and seeing, you know, and seeing a 3-week outcome of that, and going, oh wait, I might have contributed to that.
There used to be two dominant generic imbalances, and they just created the third and the fourth. We just doubled the imbalances in the world in the last 20 years, and then the number 3 and number 4 are harder to address than number 1 and number 2. They were sort of garden variety. So it's tough for me to watch the industry reinforce people should go out and learn how to do this and that, and overnight experts on interpretation, overnight experts in solution finding. And listen, there's a real simple trend in the world. People are getting more injured, more people get injured, they get injured at a younger age, and the injuries are more severe. So how effective has been this is functional training, or whatever trend has dominated in the last 20 years, how effective it has been. It's been effective at creating problems, it hasn't been effective at solving them. And we're in a world that doesn't care. You know, the health industry is really the wellness industry is really the sickness industry, because shit, if you got healthy, there'd be no pharmaceuticals, there'd be no prosthetics, you know, like you'd collapse the industry. So you're in a world that doesn't really want you to be healthy. So it's no surprise that the head's in the sand and there's a blind eye towards the trending in injuries. So I'd rather people be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So until you can competently write a program that you can tell me that 5-10 years later there was zero possibility based on time evidence that that no imbalances have been created, don't come and talk to me about being in injury prevention or be able to analyze muscle imbalances. It's a bit of a tough road for the beginner because that's how the industry thinks. But before I finish, I just want to plug my next course, which is 30 seconds, and I'll teach you everything. It's $1 million, and I'll give you my PIN number now. It's a 4-digit PIN number. It used to be 6, but now it's 4, and it'll be 2 next week, because I'll make it easier for you to give me money.
So in the live clip, you're able to see how I address the issue of physical preparation coaches want to become injury rehab experts. So just to expand on that very briefly, I do have some concerns. Injury rehabilitation is a little bit more complicated than it's given credit. There's a reason why people go to university and study it as a dedicated degree. And for a physical preparation coach to seek to become injury rehabilitation expert, it's going to take a little bit longer. I think it's a case where a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. Over and above that, some of the injury rehab strategies that I had released back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I realized were taken out of context. They were used by people who were looking for a quick way to become a hero. And in doing so, I believe that they were jumping to conclusions about what was really causing injury, and therefore were not able to effectively solve the problem. So I do encourage you to come back to the source of the information around injury prevention, injury rehabilitation. I don't say that as a way to promote my educational material. I say that as a genuine desire to advocate for the athlete, because they need all the help they can get. They're in a world where injuries are increasing, and too many people are promoting themselves as experts in this area, which is in part why injuries aren't going to decrease, neither the frequency or the severity of them. So if you are committed to helping the athlete, I encourage you to take a deeper dive into our coach education program. Now, I don't teach injury rehabilitation up front, because I want you to first of all understand how to prevent injuries. It's quite an oxymoron for me that the same people and the same thinking that caused the injuries are going to go and rehabilitate them. So I personally want to see that you have committed to injury prevention. You have a track record of preventing injuries before we go down that road of injury rehabilitation. It's a more advanced area. It's more complicated. There's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more potential contributing factors. And that's why I'm very conscious of delivering the material in a certain way. I've actually taken certain products off the market that I believe led to individuals rushing out in the market and saying, hey, I'm an injury rehab expert. So I've done a little bit of damage. I take responsibility for that by releasing some of that information. I'm seeking to correct that by pulling back in and making sure people go through a certain part of education before they raise the flag of being an injury rehab expert, so to speak. So if you are serious and committed, we look forward to giving you that information as you move through the medium to higher level of the KSI Coach Education Program.